Since Age of Empires came out a number of years ago, there have been plenty of real-time strategy games that have coupled Warcraft-style gameplay with a historical setting. Really, Age of Empires spawned a number of games, including the ensemble's own sequels, Age of Empires 2 and the spin-off Age of Mythology, as well as the products of Stainless Steel Studios, founded by Age of Empires creator Rick Goodman. The game was Empire Earth, released just a few years ago. Well, Empire's Dawn of the Modern World is the latest game from Rick Goodman. Empires is very much a follow-up to Empire Earth. It has very much the same style, but a radically different gameplay design. The biggest difference is that there are 9 civilizations. Each civilization has completely unique units. That's not to say that they're not functionally similar, that there aren't things like sword infantry or fighters or bombers, but each of the units looks completely different, has completely different voices, and most of them have special powers. Most of the civilizational differences come with special powers. There are unique spell-like powers, like storms that the medieval and early nations can call in. Really, it's the peasants know when that they're coming, right? And so there's a little bit of justification there, as well as other kinds of unit-specific abilities. For example, the GIs, the American GIs, have the ability to charge, move faster, and the Korean infantry has a martial arts ability that's pretty similar. In some ways, Empires is a simplification of Empire Earth. There are 4 resources: food, gold, stone, and wood. And many of the civilizations have their own kind of economic benefits. They all have something. Some of the nations, for example the Franks and the Germans, don't need to build houses to store their population. They just have quite a bit of default population. Some of the others, for example the English and the UK, don't have to spend or use workers to mine. They can just put a mining camp on a stone or gold deposit and can build structures automatically. They just have a worker walk up, start the building, walk away, and do something else. So the nations give you the chance to not only tailor a strategy to the particular abilities of the nation you've chosen, or also to go ahead and pick something that fits your preferences. Apart from all the design work that went into creating the unique nations, Empires isn't an ambitious game like Rise of Nations and hasn't tried to reinvent what we expect from a real-time strategy game. To this extent, there is pretty much a standard set of story-based campaigns. That's not to say that they're not interesting or challenging. In fact, they do have quite a bit of challenge to them. For the most part, they don't follow the build a base and eliminate everybody on the map formula of, say, the Command and Conquer in earlier RTS games. In fact, the designers seem to go out of their way to avoid that formula. There are a number of different scripted scenarios where you have to retreat in the face of overwhelming odds, and then try to go ahead and do some little guerrilla tactics and secure limited objectives in order to eventually overcome those odds. So that the missions can be broken up into various parts that require a little bit more tactical use. You rarely get masses of units. Although later in the 3rd campaign, the World War II campaign, there is actually something of a recreation of D-Day. You are actually sending over large numbers of troops, but you have a limited number of reinforcements. So really what you need to do is go ahead and use special units, that is the Rangers, that have a pretty devastating artillery attack, to kind of climb up the cliffs. They can travel past impassable terrain and use the artillery against the shore batteries and eventually clear the way for the Higgins boats to just unleash their GIs, will storm up and take care of AA. And then later you can use combined arms, send some fighters over, and kind of just mop up. There are 3 campaigns. A medieval campaign starring Richard the Lionheart as he tries to save the English crown and lands in Aquitaine in France. a Korean campaign during the gunpowder period that stars Admiral Yi trying to keep the Japanese from overwhelming Korea and settling in, and a World War II campaign focusing in on George Patton's role in North Africa, using commandos and other methods to keep Rommel at bay, and then later in France, really advancing through Normandy and pushing towards Berlin. The three different campaigns pack in a lot of historical detail. Sometimes there's a bit too much exposition going into the backstory of all these eminent personages. But when it comes to the missions, there's actually quite a bit of style and interesting design to them, and each pose a different kind of challenge. Empires uses a new style 3D engine with plenty of DX effects that really show up with the water. The water is beautiful. Lots of different kinds of water that'll make you appreciate or help you appreciate some of the naval encounters. Although most of the combat does take place on land or over the land when it comes to the aircraft battles. The aircraft battles are actually one of the most interesting parts of Empire's gameplay, and it's interesting to see how the graphics engine handles lots and lots of units, sometimes with squadrons of fighters passing overhead a raging battle on the ground. And yet some of Empire's visuals lack character and personality, particularly in some of the environment textures and the character animations. It's understandable that Richard walks a little funny given his armor, but a number of the other units walk a little strangely as well. The game really blossoms when you take it online or look at the skirmish mode. It's remarkably well balanced for something that has so many differences between the sides. It's not a three-side game, but there are lots of different cost and power differences between the nations that make them each have different kinds of approaches that work best with them. There's enough that's new to interest even those that aren't serious RTS fans.